So, Lewis, why do we recommend Grassroots fabric pots for organic soil growers?
So when you're growing in an organic cultivation system, you are relying on microbes that are naturally present in that soil to break down organic material and convert it to a form that's available for your plants. And in nature, soil has horizons. If you imagine, unless you're at a cliff face or something like that, soil's got constant horizons, and it's not really drying out from the sides so much as it's drying from the top down. And so by replicating this with the Grassroots living soil containers, you're allowing those microbes to thrive and continually be able to feed your plants. Whereas if you were having a wet and dry cycle in a more traditional fabric container, those microbes would likely go dormant and you would start to see what looked like nutrient deficiency.
All right. So how does it accomplish that recreation of that environmental variable?
That wet-dry cycle? Yeah, cool. So these containers are constructed with an internal plastic liner, which is BPA and heavy metals free. And what that does is it directs the water downwards when you're watering your crops so that this portion remains very consistently moist. And then in the lower section of the pot, so the bottom sort of 3 to 4 inches, is completely fabric, as is the base of the container. And what that allows for is when in a traditional plastic container, at some point you'll be forced to repot because the plant's roots will become bound and they will start to circle the bottom. In a living soil container or in a more traditional fabric pot, when the roots get towards the sides of the container and they sense that increased oxygen, they will start to be pruned back. And what that does, if we imagine, say, a tree branch or even just an annual plant that we might be pruning, if we prune off the tip, you get lots of branching coming further up. So like a plant that's growing above ground, the root system will become much denser.
Sure.
When it's getting pruned like that.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's just talk about these look like a really high quality fabric and stitching. So what's the go with that?
Yeah, it is. It's very high quality. So all of the all of the materials that go into creating this pot are American made, and so you won't find anything with this sort of material elsewhere on the market. They're incredibly durable, and they're also completely free from BPAs and heavy metals, which can be an issue in an organic system where you're using the same soil over and over and over again. And if you're adding things or your soil is in contact with something that contains heavy metals, they can end up leaching into it.
Sure, and I think there's a video online that Lewis has done about heavy metals, which I highly recommend people have a look at, just to get an idea of the impacts that can have on your health, and sort of how to be aware of heavy metals and access how do fabric pots differ from plastic pots, for instance?
Yeah, so great question. So with a traditional black plastic pot, which I've got here, there is no way for air to really reach the media. And so you have to be much more careful when watering in a plastic container because it's easier to overwater. But also, when the plant's roots get down to the bottom of this container, they will simply circle it, looking for somewhere else to start growing into. And a sort of a syndrome, if you like, that's associated with that root boundness is that the plants above ground will begin to look like they're suffering from nutrient deficiency. And you're essentially forced by this plastic container to repot the plant in order for it to maintain its health.
I guess regardless of how big that pot is, if it's in plastic, eventually you're going to get to a point where the plant's not going to be able to get any bigger or fruit anymore due to the fact that it's being restricted in its size.
That's exactly right. Whereas you could have a plant so if we had a 50-litre plastic container and then we had a plant in a 50-litre fabric pot, what will begin to happen in the plastic container once the plant has grown such a root mass that it occupies all of the substrate is that then quickly the plant health will begin to decline and you are forced to repot. Whereas in a fabric container where the roots are getting pruned by air as they approach the outsides of the container, the plant will continue to grow healthily. It will look fine. It will it won't have that sort of syndrome that we would associate with being root bound. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And so what's the, so we've got the two different types of fabric pots. So we've spoken about the Grassroots fabric pots. What's the difference with the other fabric pots that we sell, and how do we why do we recommend them for people growing with cocoa mediums and such?
Great question. So when you're growing in a cocoa or in a more hydroponic system versus, say, the organic living soil that we were talking about before, with a hydroponic system, it's advantageous to be able to irrigate as much as is possible, because every time that you irrigate, you're delivering nutrients in plant available form. So it's common for people to have the opinion in hydroponics that the more you water, the more the plants grow, if you like. And so having a fabric pot, a black traditional fabric pot like this, where there is no liner on the inside, enables you to achieve those drybacks much more quickly than you would if you were using, say, the Grassroots container that we were talking about before. And the other thing that's cool about these pots is that when you're transplanting the plant, you've got a Velcro seam, so you can simply open it up. Nice bit of ASMR there. Simply open up the pot and peel away the container and transplant, which is great. Really helps. Hey everybody, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more gardening tips, as well as over on YouTube for more in-depth videos on everything pertaining to organic and hydroponic gardening.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.